stages, enough to get here, and have proceeded to just blow our expectations. 2 easy best-of-1 wins for them. Now, here they stand. And gents, Janko, Moses, we're going to be talking about them and their opponents, Fnatic. I'd like to start on the G2 note, though. Let's start talking about the French boys, just because, well, French and Belgian, excuse me, sorry, Scream. Sorry, mate. But let's talk about them for a second. And I'll throw it to you first, Janko, just to address what G2 have in their arsenal. I know we always talk about this all-star roster, but can we just go into why we keep throwing this all-star and these names that have so much history behind them?
Well, mostly it's because of the 2 main stars on the team, Shox and Scream.
Yeah.
Shox at one point was probably the best player in the world. Scream, also known for his incredibly crisp aim, for his mechanics. And then you have RPK, who was, as far as I know, in Source, he was one of the best players. But then early 2013, he decided to retire from CS, came back early 2015, and is slowly building his way up. And recently has been actually in great form. And then you add that Smith, who's an extremely experienced player, played with Shox for a really long time, and then you have the newest addition, Body, who came in place of Existence, who was this great tactical leader, but didn't have much success in the last year and a half even, so in the end they decided to replace him.
And we'll be talking about them in depth a little later. You can just do the same for Fnatic for me. Let's leave Venton out of it, but the Swedes, the 3-time world champions, what have you got for me?
Yeah, massive talent, big, like you said, 3 times world champion. But it's more, what's interesting about Fnatic is they've had players on this team, Crims, JW, Flusha. These guys have all been, at some point, the best players in the world. They've all had their turn, being the dominant force. It was JW for a while, then Crims had his time, and it's just there's so many dominant players individually that they can kind of, when one is having an off game, they have so many different people who can pick up the pieces in a different way, and then they do a very individualistic style where they're so good at working with their current skill sets that they know how to recover from any situation. They've been a core for so long that they can work around any problems that they're going to have.
And of course, when these 2 meet, it can be quite explosive too. As you've described it before in the pre-show, loose style of play and a loose approach to CS. Looking forward to seeing how these 2 do meet in a best of 3. Of course, we had an opportunity to speak to those guys a little earlier today. We asked them how they felt this matchup was going to go down. So why don't we have a quick look at what Fnatic and G2 said about this one.
We didn't expect to go through, and we are really happy we did it because we had the best team in the world, and we had as well Astralis.
The group stage was a bit shaky at times. We lost more rounds to Cena than we should have. We have played against or practiced against G2 a lot lately, so we know how they play. We know what maps they prefer to play.
Everything changed in the team, our mindset, our in-game style.
We feel really comfortable to play against them.
We're in semi-final and we're gonna face Fnatic, but we look forward to play in the stage, and we will do everything. We will play our best, and I hope we go to the final.
We're really confident still. We have 5 top players, so we feel no doubt if we just play at a good individual level, we can sure win.
We can win against everyone, in my opinion. So we're just gonna focus on ourselves and play our best, and we will see what happens.
Flusha there saying we still have 5 of the best players. Now that does raise the question, Venton, the question mark here. Now I don't actually know how much knowledge you guys have on it. For me, it's rather minimal.
So just throw us under the bus.
Team I know that he was an up-and-coming Swede, picked up by Team Preparation, and that's it. That's the bottom line for me. Is it the same for you guys? Is this? You call him a top player. His history seems to be one team.
He played in Team Acer, as far as I know, with Threat, Crystal, and some of the other guys. So nothing to write home about. None of the major teams that we saw competing in the scene. Probably played at the local Swedish tournaments, Nordic, maybe a couple of Dream Hacks. But I think, the main problem Fnatic had is they don't know when Olofmeister is going to be back. So which player are you gonna bring in and tell them, okay, you will play with us, but as soon as Olof is back in shape, that's it. You're done, right? So they had to look for a kind of semi-pro player, someone who is maybe first they started with Plastic. He was an up-and-coming young player, but then they realized they needed someone with a bit more experience.
Yeah, and I mean they've done everything they can to accommodate, as you should. Bringing someone in, you can't just say come in and fill the shoes of Olaf. That's impossible. So they've changed a lot to be around him, and I thought he played pretty well in the group stages. So I mean that it seems to be working at the moment. But yeah, it is kind of weird that they did have to go for that player like that, and you got to imagine it's going to be for the next major, which is what, in like 6 weeks or something like that. So I mean. It will be interesting to see if Olaf comes back after that, but you can imagine that they're working with him very much, and it's actually a very cool thing to give someone an opportunity like this to play with some of the best players in the world against some of the best teams in the world, and just help them in the future as well. I mean, this is just them developing the Swedish scene at the same time.
He does seem to have kind of hit the ground running as well. He's not like he's been a complete dead weight for Fnatic, albeit it's hard to fill the shoes, as you said, of the world's best player, but he's doing an all right job so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a much easier path to go into a team like Fnatic as the fifth player and have them adjust some things and work with some of those guys who have been through so much than to go to a team of like 4 or 5 people who have never really been there, and you have to like work with them to kind of learn how to do it. With Fnatic, it's very much, I mean, it's going to be very easy to learn and pick things up from a couple different players, talking with them at practice or after practice. They're giving you tips, giving you advice of things that you need to work on, of things they want to do, and it's much easier to get assimilated into that.
And now the very interesting question, I think it's actually more interesting than it was for NIPLG, is where do they start to take this, Janko? G2's map pool is infamously a little wobbly, and so my question to you is, where do G2 want to be taking this versus the beast that is Fnatic?
I mean, both teams, their go-to vetoes are basically really strong maps for their opponents, so I presume that Fnatic is going to veto Dust 2, and that G2 is going to veto Mirage, which we saw that Fnatic is willing to play it, to pick it against Liquid, and on the other hand, we know that Dust 2 is one of G2's best maps. So after that, it gets a bit interesting in a sense, what are teams going to go for? Will Fnatic go for Cash because they were so dominant against Liquid yesterday? Will G2 go for maybe Train because they saw Fnatic lose to NIP, and it's also one of their best shortly that, okay, I don't like it either, but teams, actually some teams think about it like this. If they have a bad result, Fnatic at the mark of how much have they been playing it since it's announced that it's going to be replaced by Nuke.
Well, let's take a look. You're right, the Inferno is a real question mark, because it does seem like some teams have moved to Nuke faster than others, and so it's the bans and vetoes just get a little more difficult to predict. And also the Train factor as well, Jason. I know you sometimes kind of don't like applying one result to another, but surely a victory versus Luminosity on Train is a big deal for G2.
The thing is, just shortly, that, okay, I don't like it either, but teams, actually some teams think about it like this. If they have a bad result, Fnatic at the major, they lost to Liquid on Dust 2, they just didn't play the map after that.
Well, and it also comes down to like Astralis on Train, like they've had good results on it, but they don't think about those because they just don't like to play. But the scary thing for Train, if you're Fnatic right now, is that this is one of the few maps that when Olaf was in the lineup, they relied so much on his production. They relied very, very much on Olaf to do the damage that they need. So that's going to be a scary map for them, I think. And if it goes that way.
But it does go to Inferno for Fnatic. They choose that one, of course, infamously one of their favourite maps alongside G2's Cash. Yanko, smile on your face.
Yeah, I mean, they did decide to go for Inferno, and G2 kind of did them a small favor by picking Cash as well. I mean, it is one of their, again, maps they play. For G2, it mostly revolves around Dust 2, Cash, and Train. They can play Cobble as well. Then it depends what they want to play against Fnatic. So Fnatic is going to be happy with this, because if they didn't pick Inferno, they would probably pick Cash.
Yeah, and it's the eternal struggle, right, of doing a map veto process against Fnatic. It's like, which one? It's pick your poison. It's, you're going to pick a map that they're good on. They're one of the few teams that's actually been able to get away with having 7 maps in their pool. Like they're just, because they don't have those like set detailed tactics on each one. They very much just kind of like go with the flow. You play for the situation you're in. Very, the early stages can be very individual. They may like to make plays. So it's a little bit easier for them to manage having a 7 map pool. So it is kind of scary. And yeah, Inferno is a map that, I mean, historically they've always been gods on, always.
Absolutely. And I mean, G2, should they get to Train, we could have ourselves a very interesting series. We'll be talking about that in just a moment. But first, the commentators are standing by to let us know how they feel as now the players are setting up on stage.
All right, thank you so much, Machine. Yes, Henry, here in your hometown. It must be exciting.
Guys, how's it going? The audience still here? There it is. Proving we don't have the biggest teams, man, but we've got the biggest hearts. That's what I think. The UK's still doing it.
We haven't come to Canada yet, Henry.
Yeah,
okay, don't get carried away by too much of imagination. Listen, this is a big series. This is a big game. I mean, G2, by far the best tournament that they've put together in a long period of time. Not only that, the group stage was excellent, but they have Train in this pool, which is the 3rd map.
That's what I'm thinking. If it gets to Train, I actually fancy them going into this one. Fnatic have already dropped that map